Ann Pettifor, welcome to Silver Ales. You're originally from South Africa, you've lived in Britain, and you have been a champion of the poor in the sense that you have fought for debt relief. You had a famous effort some years ago called Jubilee 2000,
That's
and
right, yes.
it attracted a lot of celebrities, Bono and others. Yes. But I'd like you to tell me just a bit about yourself, sort of to place you in the, where you stand in the world.
Yes, well, I was born in South Africa. I grew up in the shadow of a gold mine, the gold which underpinned the Bretton Woods system of the post-war period. And I lived there and then went to university there. And then I was very unhappy with apartheid, but I didn't want to go to Robben Island, so I left. And I spent the last 40 years in Britain. I spent some time in Tanzania in the early 70s, which was a formative period for me. But I've been here since then.
You're here to discuss basically how the current crisis will affect African countries. Just let's start off with that shortly.
Yes, I mean, the point is that we now are going through, in my view, a period of very deep recession. There's a great debate whether to call it the Great Recession or the Great Depression. Nobody wants to use depression. The word depression was used in the 1930s to avoid other words, you know. But what we cannot avoid is this is the most synchronized global financial crisis in history. We've never been so synchronized as a global economy. And therefore the shocks travel across the world much more quickly than they did before, and they will hurt the poorest and the most vulnerable the most. You know, we will cut aid flows. Already yesterday the United States announced cuts in the amount of money going towards financing AIDS, and so people dying of AIDS in Africa are going to be denied medicines and things. And they're the most vulnerable of all. So this sort of thing is going to happen and get worse as a result of this crisis.
So these are people who did not benefit from the good times, but they will suffer from the...
They're totally innocent. And I mean, there are innocents in Iceland, there are innocents in Britain, there are innocents in the United States. People who played no part in this at all, carried on doing their work, daily basis, did their thing, did the proper thing, saved money, worked hard, and, you know, they are victims.
You actually predicted the crisis, the debt crisis, in 2003, and then in 2006 you wrote a book actually about the coming crisis.
Yes. In 2003, I'd been around Africa. I'd campaigned to get 42 countries were relieved of something like 80 to 90 billion dollars of debt as part of our campaign. But then I'd been in Southeast Asia in ' for that crisis, and I'd been in Argentina in 2001 for the Argentina crisis. So by then I thought I could see how these crises unraveled. But when I started totting up the numbers, I thought, well, the debt here is tiny compared to the debt in my country, Britain, and in the United States. So we know, and the imbalances are very, very grave. And so that it was obvious to me. So in 2003, I wrote a book called The Real World Economic Outlook, which is, this is what it's really like. Of course, it was ignored.
Yes.
And then in 2006, I wrote a book with a chapter on Iceland, actually, in which I said Iceland was like the butterfly's wing. You know, it was the first flutter, the March 2006 crisis here was the first flutter of the butterfly's wing, which then causes, you know, volcanoes elsewhere. And sure enough, it was.
Yes.
But in May 2006, the IMF said, no, the global economy has never been in better condition than it is now. So it was very hard, you know. I mean, to work at the IMF, you have to have 2 PhDs, not 1. And humble people like me, you know, can't compete with that kind of thing. So we were ignored, and they were believed.
So they said they ignored you, and they said you didn't know what you were talking about.
They did. I didn't know what I was talking about. And so, but the awful tragedy for me is that, you know, ordinary investors, ordinary people putting their pension funds money away or investing in pension funds, did believe them, you know. And so when British professors, one of the things I'm most angry about Iceland is that the economics profession colluded, if you like, with the finance sector in the delusion that this was a party that could go on forever. So, you know, there were British economic professors, and indeed the president of the Royal Economic Society in Britain wrote a letter in the Financial Times in July 2008 refuting an earlier letter in which a professor had said Iceland was in trouble. And he said, not at all, far from it. And he co-signed this with an Icelandic professor. And as a result, ordinary people in Britain, never mind in Iceland, you know, kept putting their money in the banks, kept investing in this bubble. And that I find is criminal, in my view.
You find it criminal?
I find it criminal because I think if you are a professor of economics, if you're in that privileged position, if you have access to data, if you get behind the scenes of banks, you have a duty to tell the truth of what's really going on. And I think there's been a lot of collusion and there's been a lot of, well, very bad economics is all I can say. Really.
But in hindsight, all of this seems to be a bit mad. It was not only, I think you've used the word unbalanced, unfair and unsustainable.
Yes.
And a bit mad as well.
Crazy.
Yes.
Absolutely crazy. But very destructive too, because look what is being destroyed, you know. People's livelihoods are being destroyed, you know. Productive industries are being destroyed. What upsets me about the way the politicians are approaching the crisis now is they're focusing on the banks. Now, the banks don't produce a thing. The banks are mere facilitators. They simply are they just handle the tokens that go between you and I.
Yes.
We do the work.
Yes.
The people doing the real work, the businesses, and I don't mean labourers just here, I mean corporates, are the ones, you know, interest rates for companies in Britain and the United States are at extraordinarily high rates. The base rate is 0.5%, but if you want to borrow to invest, for example, in green technology in the United States or wherever, you're paying 18-20%. It's very, very high. And the governments are not paying attention to that. They're worrying about the banks. And whereas what we need to worry about is our corporate sector and our productive sector.